welcome ladies and gentlemen. This is the Film Odyssey podcast where me and my brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the best film ever made. This season we begin our journey by counting down the AFI top 100 films of all time. And today we talk about number 95 on the AFI top 100, The Last Picture Show. So Randy, how you doing?
We're already 5 movies in. This doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten this far and I don't think we've seen a bad movie yet.
No, we have not seen a bad movie yet.
Yeah.
And Last Picture Show is definitely in the category of not bad movies. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And this one's a little bit surprising because all the other movies we've seen so far, I've at least heard of. Like outside of like film people circles.
Uh-huh.
I think the one that's probably like out of the first 5 were the lowest was like Yankee Doodle Dandy. But like even that I heard outside of film stuff. This one's kind of a deep cut.
It's new to you?
A little bit, because I went and watched this like a year or two ago. And I ain't gonna lie, I got like 20-30 minutes in, and this was like a after work movie, and I fell asleep. And I feel really bad because the movie's really good. It's like really funny.
Yeah, but I would understand if you fell asleep to this movie. I mean, it's slow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like there's a lot of action or anything.
Yeah.
It's a coming of age story, kind of slice of life, you know, just taking a look into basically like a year of this town.
Yeah, and all these kids who basically we see go from these, kids to these really jaded, kind of sad adults.
They age a lot in only like a year, because I believe at the beginning of the movie they're like high school seniors, and then we see them like graduate and like get jobs and some of them move on from the town completely.
Yeah.
And it's just like they age so much in just a year.
It's really crazy. It makes it kind of makes me think about like when we left high school, where it's like I didn't think I changed that much from high school me to like college me, and then I'm like, nah, dude, you were like a totally different person like 6 months after high school.
That's the way it goes, you know. That's why they make movies like this. That's why this is on here. This is why this exists.
Yeah. I guess I should give people, I guess, the rundown of the plot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the plot's a little innocuous, right? Or maybe not innocuous isn't the right word, but it's very meandering. The most concise way I could explain this is it follows these youths in this town of Arlene, Texas. Main character is arguably like Sonny Boy.
Well, I think the two main characters would be Sonny and
Dwayne.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
I would say that those two would be the main characters because they go through this movie as, you know, being best friends in high school to like growing apart and growing back together and growing apart again.
Yeah, and we also have Sybil Shepherd's character. We just finished watching this movie, and I think her name's what, Darcy? Jacy? Jacy, okay. Jacy. So, Jacy.
Yes.
And these 3 youths, we're following them as they graduate high school. They kind of leave the idealization of their adulthood behind from, like, high school years and really grow up and become these jaded adults when they're confronted with, you know, the trials of adulthood in this small town. We see them go through affairs, loss of loved ones. We see basically the death of their hometown.
Yeah.
After the town heart, Sam the Lion, dies, everything just kind of goes to shit.
Everything kind of falls apart.
It almost turns into a Dust Bowl looking kind of town. And I know, and this movie takes place, I believe, in like the 1950s, because it's during the Korean War.
1951, 1952.
Yeah. And that's more or less the story. I mean, there's a lot more like very particular scenes we're going to get into, but it's a really loose plot because it is just a slice of life. We're just following these characters.
Yeah, we're just following them live their lives. It just happens to be their lives when major changes are happening to them. You know, they're leaving this kind of like structured lifestyle of high school to being out in the quote-unquote real world, as everybody says, you know?
Yeah.
And basically how they leave their innocence behind. Some earlier than others. I think mostly the main characters are the ones that leave their innocence behind the slowest, and all of the like side characters have already left it behind.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue Sonny Boy's the main character.
Yeah, he's the main character. I'd say secondary is probably Dwayne and Jacy.
Yeah, and it feels like Jacy is the first one to kind of like lose her like sense of like innocent youth. I mean, as soon as we get to the pool party, she's already gone.
But the thing is, because we're at the pool party, everybody else at that pool party has lost their innocence before her. The guy even says, I did this last Easter. That means that's when he lost his, comparatively to her. So it's like, and also when they go and get Billy the prostitute, spoilers by the way.
Yeah. They get the mute kid a hooker for giggles.
Yeah. And the other people there, like 2 of them mentioned that they've already been with this prostitute beforehand.
Yeah.
So that means that they've lost their innocence before Sonny has, or Dwayne, or Jacy.
Yeah. It's really interesting because there's definitely a loss of innocence theme going on throughout this movie.
Yeah, I mean, Jacy mostly loses her innocence because her mom tells her to.
Which is a very weird relationship between Jacy and her mother. Because it's her mother.
Am I allowed a based take here?
Okay, you get one base take.
Whores beget whores, man.
Jesus. Look, okay, like, you call that a base take, but yeah, like, Jacy's mom is... Ooh, she's trifling.
Quite the woman.
Yeah. And Jacy's like, at the beginning of the movie, she's like, I want to do anything to just not be like you. I love Dwayne. I want to, like, get married. I want to live this happy life.
She doesn't even want to have sex before marriage. She tells her mother that she wasn't going to do that. It's a sin. I want to get married with Dwayne. I love him and all this other things. And her mom basically tells her, like, oh, maybe if you screw him a couple times, you'll get over it.
And she ain't wrong.
Well, but she's already over Dwayne by the time she screws him.
It's true.
She's just trying to get at that other guy at that point who has such a lost sense of innocence that the guy won't even get with virgins.
Should we put a trigger warning here? Because there's a lot of fucking. Fuck it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, that's one of the things that I didn't expect about this movie that I was kind of, like, taken aback from is because, it's set in, like, it's all black and white, set in, like, the early 50s. There is a lot of sex in this movie.
Well, I mean, it's based on a book. This movie came out
based on a book that came out in, like, 1966, I think.
Yeah, 66, and this movie comes out in 71.
Yeah.
And, it's really interesting because this is, like, primo New Hollywood, right? Because New Hollywood starts with Bonnie and Clyde in 67, I believe. I believe it comes out in 67, which we're going to get to later. That movie's on here. And, like, New Hollywood had this whole different take where it's like, oh, they can tell more, like, intimate stories, then those can make a lot more money, and they could have these really downer kind of bleak outlooks. Whereas, like, Hollywood movies from beforehand really couldn't do that. Like, Yankee Doodle Dandy does not have, like, a bleak outlook on life and society. Ben-Hur doesn't have a bleak outlook on life and society. And those were old Hollywood films.
Yeah.
This has a way more, like, bleak, very jaded look at the world around it. And I want to kind of talk about the director, or at least the production a little bit, because it's a little interesting. Because the production was kind of an accident. Or the film being made was an accident. Because the director, Peter Bogdanovich... He was barely a director. He was like a film critic and an essayist. He wrote like film criticism, right?
Okay.
And he directed movies for like Roger Corman.
Oh.
And not the good Roger Corman movies. Like hey, we have Boris Karloff for a week on this other movie, and I have some extra footage. Get me 90 minutes out of like 30 minutes of Boris Karloff footage. And he would make those. And the producer of the film literally got the job because he bought the rights as a joke, and he never produced a movie before. He was a lawyer. And Peter Bogdanovich was like, hey, I kind of want to make this, and will you give me, like, all this money to do it? And he's like, yeah, fuck it, I want to get in the movie business. And the novel it's based on was by basically a unknown author. Literally, Peter Bogdanovich was in a grocery store, saw it in, like, a 50-cent rack, and was like, that's a really cool title. I think I can make a movie of that. I don't think he read the book before he decided to make the movie. He just saw the title and thought it was good. That's how this movie became a thing.
But I mean, this movie was hyper successful, wasn't it? It got nominated for a bunch of awards.
Incredibly successful, yeah. The film, critically, it was a huge darling. It earned like 40 nominations across 14 festivals and award ceremonies. It won 17 out of 40 of those and won 2 Oscars, including Best Supporting Actor and Actress for Ben Johnson and Cloris Leachman. Yeah, so, Sam the Lion, and Cloris Leachman, I know her character's name is Ruth, but what affectionate name did you call her during the movie?
Who, Ruth?
Yeah. Didn't you say she was like, oh, the mill's on the prowl today?
Oh, God, no. I was talking about how, when Sonny and Ruth are like at the trash bin, you know, and they like kiss for the first time. I didn't give her that name. I said, "Oh, is this the part of the movie where Sonny like goes out and bangs all the milfs in town?" You know, because he'd been eyeing up Genevieve beforehand. And it's like, you know, I mean, at the end of the movie or whatever, I thought like maybe him and Jacy's mom. What's her name?
Jacy's mom. I don't actually.
Jacy's mom.
She's got it going on.
Don't copyright us. But you know, at the end when they're kind of like eyeing each other in the car.
Yeah, and I think it's because she sees a lot of Sam in Sonny.
In Sonny, you know. Yeah. She says, "I see what he saw in you," and then she's like, "Nah."
She literally does not like, "Nah, Dick, nah."
And she's like, "Maybe nah,
Doc, nah."
But no, I didn't give her any nickname, alright? She's just Ruth.
She's just Ruth. Okay, sorry. But that happened a lot in this movie because we had a good time watching this. I think we were cracking a couple jokes in a couple. At the beginning
of the movie, it's actually pretty funny, and that's why I kind of didn't expect it to get so like bleak and kind of real, you know? Mm-hmm. Because at the beginning of the movie, they're all just ribbing Sonny because he didn't tackle anybody during the ball game, you know?
This town is full of fucking savages. These people are talking the maddest shit in all of cinema.
Not mad shit, but I mean, like they're getting pretty good ribs, you know.
Yeah, but yeah, like this is just a really interesting movie. Before I forget, it wasn't only a critical success, it was a giant moneymaker because this had $1 million budget and it made $30 million in 1971 money.
Big.
It was a top 10 earner that year.
That's big gains.
That is great gains. It basically gave Peter Bogdanovich like free reign to write whatever the fuck he wanted and make whatever movies he wanted. And him being also a disciple of Orson Welles, it kind of helped. If you ever look up Peter Bogdanovich, half the pictures of him is him with Orson Welles.
Oh,
like that is like they were homies.
I see.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess back to the movie. Where do you want to go with this one? Because this isn't like Do the Right Thing, where there's so many themes and things to like just dig into. This is like one really big theme, and then all this stuff with the characters.
It takes like this, you know, loss of innocence and kind of extrapolates it. You know, mm-hmm. It takes it all over the place. It's not talking about like, oh, this, and then this, and then this, and then this. It's talking about this one big thing, and then what can we, like, get from that, you know? And it's talking about, you know, the loss of innocence where the infidelity in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Sonny's getting with Ruth, mm-hmm. which is his coach's wife.
Yeah.
You know, we have, what's the guy's name? Adeline?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that owns like the oil company, I suppose, that's like near town.
Yeah.
And he gets with both Jace and Jace's mom.
They got it going on. You know, he gets with both of them, you know, and it's not like he's Jace's husband. That's far from the truth. God, no.
I mean, we barely even see Jace's husband in the entire fucking movie.
It's true.
But, you know, all these things that, like, the infidelity that happens in the town. I mean, there's even, like, the whole scene with like the naked pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
How it's like all these kids are like becoming like swingers almost, you know, like
yeah. Actually, that scene almost got this film fucking banned in like some cities.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you know, early 70s, still a little bit more conservative,
and it's just a room full of like naked, I guess, quote unquote teenagers. They're all probably like in their 20s or whatever.
Yeah,
but they're all buck naked,
buck ass naked.
Yeah.
And this is back in the times or whatever where you know, men cross their legs to hide their Johnsons on film, and women, they just grow out their bush.
I mean,
it's so funny that like that's how they use, like that's what they do to like censor, like, you know, the genitals in the movies. You know, it's like, oh, men, oh, you know, you have to like angle the camera up, you know, to not get it on screen. You gotta, like, have them put, like, a towel over themselves or some clothes.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, you know, put my pants over my lap when the camera pans to me.
Little modest.
A little modest, but women, nah, just grow out the bush. They can't see nothing.
You want to know the best part? There is, in fact, a thing in film, and it's called the Bush Wig, where if a woman is, you know, cleanly
Clean shaven.
there, yeah, they're literally in costuming. They make a fake bush to put on.
So you're saying that there's Bush propaganda in films?
Yes.
They're pushing the no shave agenda. I can't even say it with a straight face.
This might get cut out. I don't know.
No, I mean it's, you know, it's a part of the movie, you know, where
it is a part of the movie, and also
it just shows that they're more brazen with the women, you know.
That's really true, because even like the sexualization of a lot of the characters, because it's like the whole crux of the movie is like Sonny Boy's having this affair, but we never really. You made the comment that's like all the sex scenes of this movie is just people lying on top of each other, and it's like moaning and a little movement, but you never see anything past the shoulders.
Yes, and I mean they really didn't. I guess they were not creative with their sexual intercourse in the 1950s.
Probably not.
I mean, they're just strictly laying on top of each other.
Yeah, the missionary tried and true, but it, like with Dwayne, right? He wants to get with, or him and Darcy, they want to, you know, have sex. They want to make
Jacy.
Him and Jacy want to make love. They wanted to have sex, all this other stuff. But like, we never see Jeff Bridges naked. We never see Sonny Boy naked. We see Sybil Shepherd's tits like 3 times in this movie.
Well, I mean, she's shown as like the promiscuous character. She's almost like manipulative with her sex in this movie. She really is. Man, it's kind of one of those things where she gets it from her mom.
Yeah, and she kind of... It's interesting because she grows from this very... I guess, you know, very conservative, very, you know, I'm going to wait till marriage, and very, like...
Having sex before marriage is a sin. She says that.
She says that. Movie. She's a very wholesome, like, girl, and then she just evolves to being this, like, femme fatale, almost. She manipulates Sonny Boy literally just for kicks. I think she only gets with him
she's
just
trying to find something and doesn't manage to do it.
What do you think she's looking for?
She's looking for what she had with Dwayne before.
Is that the same thing like her mom was talking about Sam? Or she was like, you know...
She's looking for her mom, Sam. But she had it beforehand, but after the whole, you know, being more promiscuous, going to the pool party...
Yeah.
She kind of loses that spark, you know? That connection with Dwayne.
Well, also, from our understanding, Dwayne is apparently a terrible lay.
I mean, I suppose.
According to Jacy, he's a terrible... Also, that is one of the funniest scenes in the movie. It seems like
she has her mind up about the lay beforehand, though.
I mean, after the first, which is one of the funniest scenes in cinema, where he's like, I don't know what happened. And where they're going... So... Dwayne and Jacy, they're going to have sex and basically... In this motel. And Jacy has told everybody in high school. So they're all waiting outside and they're like, oh man, it's happening because she's an attention whore.
Well, not everybody's outside, but like a couple of her friends are outside and like Sonny like drove Dwayne here.
Mm-hmm. And so they're all just like, yeah.
Those 3 characters are outside and they're all being like, oh yeah, go get them.
Let's go. And... They get in there, and she's just, like, laying there, just like, all right, do it. Let's go. Let's get this happening. And he's like...
She's, like, literally, like closing her eyes, like, you know, just, like, she wants to just be over with.
She's like, I want this so I can, like, move on from this. And Dwayne is, like, getting over her, and he's just like, I'm sorry, I can't. She's like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. And it's like... They went to Mexico. He drank the water, and it was done. It was over.
Oh, yeah, because it's supposed to be right after that. Right after Sonny and Dwayne go to Mexico.
Yeah, which is also like, bruh, that's how you know this is in a different time. Let's just take a trip down to Mexico. Weekend trip.
It was like a weekend trip to Mexico, just randomly in the movie.
Yeah.
And then when they come back, Sam has died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this huge blow to them in this movie. Because Sam was kind of like, you know, because apparently, like, Sonny's, like, dad, like, isn't around, right? Like, he's there, but he's not there.
I got the impression that Sonny's dad was kind of the town, like, drunk or the town disappointment.
Yeah, and
thing.
he's like, I guess he's like divorced from Sonny's mom or something.
Yeah, and this is also weird because this sleepy town feels like there should be a lot more people divorced than there should be married. But I feel there's a lot of people who are just married, like the coach and Ruth, just because that's just how it is. You're just supposed to be in an unhappy marriage forever.
I mean, that's how a lot of the characters in this movie are. They're in unhappy marriages. You know, there's the coach and Ruth. There's Jacy's mom and her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, you can almost say, like, Genevieve and her husband, you know, complaining about his medical bills and whatnot, how he can't work.
Man, that is so depressing.
I mean, it's one of those things about the loss of innocence of this town. You realize that the coach or whatever, he's your coach, your high school coach, you know, you kind of look up to him, and you realize that he has a really unhappy marriage.
He's also kind of a shitty person. I get the feeling that the coach, he's like super neglectful. Cause what is it? Ruth, we never see him at the house. Ruth is always there by herself, and she's just like, yeah, he's always at school, always away from me, and he's never here. And I'm like, I feel like the coach is also just kind of a dick.
Yeah, but we don't know, you know?
It's true. We don't get a lot of him. All we get is that he's just kind of this, like, loud, like...
workaholic kind of guy.
Yeah. Granted, him slapping the asses of some of those, like, the boys was a little weird.
This was a little weird. I was like, I'm not sure if I want to glean anything from that, because they don't make any point of it throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, you get it with the preacher's son.
Well, the preacher's son, it's, like, overt.
Yeah.
That he's, like, some kind of pedo.
Yeah, and also, dude, like...
They just kind of snuck that in the movie, didn't they?
Yeah! Okay, that's another thing about that happens in this movie, and I kind of want to talk about it because I don't know if it was like this is just a different societal standard or a different time, but he kidnaps a 9-year-old girl and takes her out into, like, the boonies. And, you know, yeah, the cops...
I don't even think she's 9. She's got to be younger than that.
Probably young. Okay, on the oldest end, she's probably 9.
Like 9, yeah.
Yeah, but she's probably like 7. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he takes her out there, and, you know, the cops or whatever find out, and, you know, Sheriff rounds up a posse, because this is Texas in the 50s, and they go and drive out to him, right?
They find him out in the boonies somewhere by, like, he's parked next to some, like, wheat field or something.
Yeah, and we find out later in the movie, and he's just standing there, and he's like, you know, I don't know if he's, like, crying, but he's not doing anything, and she's just, like, jumping up and down and playing in the car. And we find out later, it's like, oh yeah, all he did was convince her to take her panties off. I'm like, wait, what? That's like, not a misdemeanor.
Like, later on, you know, it's probably 6 months later in the movie or whatever, but they're like, oh yeah, he's out of jail now, and blah, blah.
And I'm like, 6 months?
He didn't do nothing.
Bruh. Like, is that just a change of society? Because I feel that's not a misdemeanor. That's a felony. Because that mom is pressing full charges.
But it is the preacher's boy.
It's the preacher's son?
It is the preacher's son.
Oh, God. But that's so, like...
And it's just thrown in there.
Yeah. Is that just another thing where it's like, oh, he's the preacher's son, right? And it's like, maybe implying some corruption of, like, the church or something?
Well, yeah, corruption of the church, or implying that maybe, you know, he was molested by his dad.
Oh. This movie gets dark. Ugh.
I mean, this movie is kind of dark when you start thinking about it. Like, you think about why these people are like how they are.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, I guess, goes a lot to this movie, because these characters are way deeper than
they
seemed, yeah. And I guess I don't know what I was expecting. I
really don't know what I was expecting either, but this definitely wasn't it.
Okay. Because I remember I saw, like, the first 30 minutes of this, and I didn't really know what was going. I was under the assumption this was going to be, like, American Graffiti, but, like, the art house version. It ain't that. Did you have any expectations of this going in?
Not really.
No?
No, I was like, it's like a black and white movie set in the 50s, was made in, like, the early 70s. I was like, it could be anything, but it's probably going to be, like, I don't know, just kind of, like, about some kids getting into some trouble, you know, like...
Yeah.
It was going to be like this movie, but way more lighthearted.
Yeah, it was going to be more like, oh, upbeat nostalgia trip or some shit.
You know, where it's like, it's one of those movies where, like, everybody's upbeat throughout most of the movie, and, like, Sam would die in like the third act and it would change the town, but they would all grow for the better because of it, type of thing.
Sam dies like in the first half.
Yeah, well, he dies at like, I would say like the end of the first act, maybe.
Also, it feels like Sam was holding this town together.
Well, yeah, I mean, he owned the pool hall, he owned the theater, and he owned the cafe.
Yeah. And that looked like those were the only shops open in that entire main street.
Yeah, it's basically where everybody hangs out, is either at the cafe, the movie theater, or the
Pool hall. Yeah, and like...
Oh, I guess there's also that drive-in.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's a drive-in.
And by drive-in, I don't mean drive-in theater, I mean it's like drive-in...
It's like
food place, it's like a drive up.
Yeah, which is... This town seems so bleak.
It's small town America,
It's small town America. It's like dying small town America. This feels...
Which it kind of was in the 70s.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it feels like this is a snapshot of what a lot of these small towns kind of looked like before just time smoothed them over into history. Because I can imagine like this town, or a town like this probably existed, and there's probably just an abandoned main street somewhere in like central Texas. Yeah, and it's just abandoned main street.
This is in northern Texas,
or northern Texas, but you know what I
same
mean.
Thing.
Yeah, it's just like some abandoned town there that has like a movie theater that closed down in like the fucking 60s or some shit. There ain't nobody lives around it for miles. The only people who come there like...
Well, it's the only people that still live there are the people that have lived there for God knows how many generations, never moved out.
Yeah. God damn. I don't know where to go with this. I just feel so depressed now.
Well, I mean, we could talk about how the movie ends.
Okay, actually, that's a good question. Because we have Sonny who goes through this whole arc where he has the affair with Ruth, and he finally gets quote-unquote what he wants in Jacy. Where she basically is like, oh, I love you, want to make it with me, all this other stuff. They go run off and get married and shit, and she's doing it for fucking kicks. But then at the end we have Billy die, who's the mute kid that the town kind of looks after, and he can only go back to Ruth because I think that's when he realizes she's kind of the only person he loves.
Well, the only person that like he can connect to, that he can bond with, that's still around, because Billy's gone.
Dwayne shipped off to Korea.
Yeah, Dwayne shipped off to Korea. Jace went to college in Dallas.
Yeah,
and Ruth's the only one left since Also, those people were so heartless with Billy.
Yeah,
like the guy. So how Billy dies in the movie is that basically this like farm truck like runs like hits him, right?
Yeah. He's like sweeping like a street.
Billy
or something.
is like we see him all throughout the movie. It's kind of like foreshadowing that he just kind of like sweeps the street out in front of the pool hall. It's just kind of what he does.
Yeah.
And this like farm truck with like a bunch of like cows in the back of it like hits him and kills him, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like a bunch of like the townspeople out there talking to the guy or whatever, like standing around Billy. His like lifeless corpse on the ground, just kind of being like, that boy was never right.
And it's so cold.
So just cold and heartless. Like this, like he was just some thing,
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know exactly how old Billy is, but it's like, in the movie, it's implied he's, maybe like 16, 17?
Yeah, he's like probably like a year or so younger than the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
So he's probably 17 or something.
Yeah, so they're standing over this, like, kid. Like, literally this kid who fucking doesn't do anything to anybody in the movie, and he's just a corpse, and they're just it's a really cold thing. And then that's the only point where he gets Sonny, who just is like, the fuck's wrong with you people, and he drags him out of the street. Sonny has to drag Billy's body out of the street by himself in tears, and all these guys do just watch him and like, I don't understand these kids.
Yeah, there are. You got some weird kids in this town.
What the fuck? What happened to these men to make them so jaded?
I think that's what's happening to the town.
It's just getting cold.
Also, it's it's how everybody in the town knows that Sonny's with Ruth, except for the coach. And everybody's just kind of like, yeah, that's the way it goes, They're so jaded about it.
Okay, you remember King of the Hill?
Yes.
How everybody knew that Nancy was sleeping with John Rancorn?
Yes.
And everybody was just like, nah, just let sleeping dogs lie. And I'm... Okay, in King of the Hill, it's developed over like 14 years of whatever, so I'll leave that alone. But in this, I'm like, Do you think the coach knows and he just doesn't care?
Is anybody in town actually Coach's friend?
Again, more depressing. Depression on top of depression. And it's smeared over this, like, black comedy shit that's going on.
I mean, this is, like, surprisingly really bleak for being, at first, kind of what seems like a kind of, like, upbeat coming-of-age story where, you know, everybody's ribbing each other and there's kind of like, ooh, you know, look, the, you know, high school kids are finally getting some.
Yeah. You're expecting this to turn into, like, just, like, a naked, or, an American Pie movie.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, they're all just, you know, getting obsessed with, like, getting laid, getting stoned, going to parties, and just like, living their best life before they all have to, like, go off to college, or the army, or, you know find a new life.
Work on an oil field, like some of them.
Yeah.
And it's just, that ain't it, Chief.
Yeah.
Like, everything gets so bleak and just kind of like really down near the end of the movie. Like, it starts really like, oh, happy-go-lucky, whatever, and just kind of tapers off for the entire 2 hours of the movie until at the very end it's just like, man, that's fucked up.
You're like, dude, at the end of it, you're just like, man, that's fucking life sometimes. I ain't gonna say like all the time because I'm an optimist, but it's like, and also life isn't this depressing all the time. And granted, this is a movie, so they're compressing all like the worst beats of a human lifespan in like 2 hours. But I'm like, this is a really raw, uncompromising look at what growing up looks like.
Yeah, what growing up looks like, what, you know, the small town America dying looks like.
Yeah. Because there's no small towns like this anymore.
There are, it's just, geez, good luck finding them. Good luck, you know, finding more than a handful of them.
Yeah. A town like this where everyone knows everyone knows everyone's bullshit and dirty secrets, and everyone kind of has that agreement of like, I stay out of your business, you stay out of mine kind of thing.
Yeah, or the sheriff goes and rounds up a posse.
That was some shit, right? Because I'm looking and I'm like, yeah, no, that shit's real. That was probably how 90% of police work got done back in like the 50s in a small town, where you go into the diner where the fucking sheriff is, and the sheriff's like, all right, boys, let's go. And it's like just everyone in the diner's like, all right, I don't have to pay my bill if I go with a posse. And they just go off with the sheriff.
Yeah, all the people, well, it was in the pool hall, but yeah, all the people were like, you know, dropped their game, got in their cars, and drove off. Also, this is quintessentially American because of all the like, you know, American small town like car culture comes with it too.
Yeah, all the country western stuff going on.
Oh, the soundtrack for this movie's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so
Gina.
Good.
Fucking Gina. Oh, and that might be a thing because it's like, you know, they got some Hank Williams in there, and I'm like, we grew up in Southern California our entire lives. We were not country boys, as it were, but sometimes you get that Hank Williams comes on and you're just like, man, I just want to go drive down to the fishing hole.
I was really hoping some Heartaches by the Number would come on.
You just love Fallout New Vegas. So good.
Well, that's what the soundtrack reminded me of, but I mean, like, they're supposed to be set in similar eras, you know, in that like early 50s, you know, kind of like musical eras. Mm-hmm. And that stuff just, it always gets me, you know. It always sounds so good. It always is so like thoughtful, like full of feeling.
It's emotionally on point.
Yeah.
That's the thing about some of that old, like, country western stuff, where it's just, like, emotionally, that shit is just, like razor sharp. Like, it gets to
really
you.
Concentrated.
Yeah, and throughout this movie, that's what's going on here. They're, like, getting all these emotional bits just going for it. And there's so much music going on here, and also, like, the aesthetic of the film. Like, the movie theater they're in, mm-hmm. that kind of reminded me of the movie theater at the Square, the Dollar Theater.
Oh.
Where it's like, yeah, this is kind of a lower end kind of deal. You go there because it's cheap and the boys are going out. But it's like, man, that's the kind of theater that you don't see anymore.
No, you really don't. I mean, a lot of this movie is just things you don't see anymore, you know? Like, the small town America, mm-hmm. this kind of, like, camaraderie between, like, the whole town together. you know, all of these, like, people who would nowadays be kind of like strangers, you know, the person who runs the diner, the guy who runs the pool hall, the lady that runs the theater, you know, nowadays they're just all strangers, but in this, like, little small town America stuff back then, they're all people you know by first names.
Yeah.
You know all these people. They rib you about the football game, you know, like, they're all your friends.
They're all your friends, and then as the movie goes on, you find out they ain't your friends, dog.
You know, you either grow, like, apart from them, or
You realize who they are.
or they die.
Yeah. Honestly, I still think this movie's a banger.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I can also see the influence this movie has given to other movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Give me some examples. Hit me with it.
All right. So the bleak coming of age story, I feel that's pretty on point with this, because there's another coming of age story we're gonna watch later, American Graffiti, George Lucas's film. But this really feels like a precursor to. God, I'm trying to think of like a good example.
What about, like, Stand By Me? When did that come out?
Oh, Stand By Me came out in the 80s. That's based on the Stephen King book. And actually Stand By Me is kind of an interesting one, because it is this story about these, you know, kids who, like, come together and who are, like, best friends, and they go to see a dead body, and it's this, like, you know, these kids who are these youthful people being confronted by death, right? And the kids in this movie, it's this youthful group being confronted by not only death, but infidelity.
You know, this, like, loss of Christian goodness.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole other thing. I think that's why the preacher's son is, like, turns out to be a fucking child molester. Where it's just like that old school Christian value sense is just whittled away and just gone by the end of this movie. Because everybody in this movie is very much like,
in the very, like, first couple scenes, it's, you know, everybody in here are, like, good Christian boys and girls.
You know.
And then they just kind of all lose it by the end.
Yeah. This movie's a very interesting commentary about, like, even American society.
I can really see why it's on this list.
Well, do you wanna just cut to the chase and talk about its in comparison to on the list?
Sure, go for it.
All right. Well, so this movie, it comes in at number 95 on this list, and it was a brand new addition to this one. It wasn't on the 98 list, so just comes up
to make sure everybody knows that there's only ever been 2 lists.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that's not, like, all the way known. Yeah, there's only ever been 2 lists. One was in 1998, the very first one they did, and they did a 10-year update in 2007.
Unfortunately, this isn't, like, some kind of institution where they've been, you know, doing these top 100 lists since, like, the 60s, you know?
Yeah, it's not like the BFI or the Sight and Sound or anything like that. The AFI 100 has only had 2 lists ever. They have a couple of other lists that are, like, the best sci-fi movies, the best quotes, the best heroes, the best villains. But in terms of just best movies, period, these are the only 2 ones. And this one was a new addition. And it comes in at 95, kind of low on the list, but it's above some pretty banging movies we've seen so far. Ben-Hur, Toy Story, Yankee Doodle Dandy, Blade Runner, Do the Right Thing that we did last week. And do you think this is better than all of them? Do you think it'll go up if they do another list? Do you think it'll maybe take a couple points down? Do you think its influence is deserving of being on this list?
I think its influence is definitely deserving on this list. It's kind of like quintessential American small town, and how it shows it so well in kind of like this unusual lighting of being this, like, really bleak movie.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it, like, deserving of this list. And I'm after seeing this movie, I'm like, Yankee Doodle Dandy does not need to be on this list if this movie's on it.
Really?
Yeah, this, like, quintessential, very American movie.
This Americana flick?
Yeah, where it's like, you know, like, this movie doesn't have as much appeal to somebody who's not American.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is not quite, you know, the case with something like Blade Runner. If you're not American, I don't think Blade Runner really changes all that much for you.
Yeah.
Or Toy Story or Ben-Hur.
Yeah, I feel that's a good point, because The Last Picture Show feels like so Americana.
Yeah.
In, like, its aesthetic and it's in what is going on. But I mean, thematically, though, I feel the theme of it is very universal. You know, the loss of innocence as you grow.
Sure, yeah, but the setting and the way it's portrayed,
how the characters also act and how their transformation goes. Because at the heart, I think this is more of a character study than anything. It's this study of these characters and how they just evolve.
Yeah, but I mean, to your, like, average viewer, they're gonna see it as more of an American happening.
Yeah.
You know, that this is more of, like, an American... What's the word for it? Like an American phenomena.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. It does feel very uniquely American, and it is on the American Film Institute's list, so makes sense. But so you're of the opinion that if this is on this list, Yankee Doodle Dandy should come off.
Yes. Even though, like, Last Picture Show and Do the Right Thing are also both like quintessentially American, but Do the Right Thing has enough different, like, takes on American culture. It's whole
thematics of, like, racism, cult, and, like,
and, like,
and things like that is way different.
Like, snapshot of time. I think both The Last Picture Show and Do the Right Thing take a better approach to snapshotting their, like, place and time than Yankee Doodle Dandy, even though I know Yankee Doodle Dandy takes place over many years.
Yeah.
But
it's also a thing where I really like Yankee Doodle Dandy. I keep going back on it and thinking about it.
It's just a nice movie, but it's like, it doesn't hold up to these other movies.
It really doesn't. Like, I would not be... Because Yankee Doodle Dandy was the number 100 on the original list, and it actually moved up 2 spaces. But I wouldn't be surprised if Yankee Doodle Dandy goes down to 100.
Or off.
I mean,
it just depends on how many new movies they want to bring into the next list. Because, you know, the AFI probably wants to bring in new blood into the list, because, you know, I mean, they kind of do.
Yeah. I mean, as we go through the films, we're going to come across a lot of films that are like, these were good for their times, and they're on the list for
promotional reasons.
Or prestige far more than quality.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting thing to look at, because I know we talked about this a few episodes ago, where the criteria of films for getting on the list matter, and one of them is cultural influence over time. And Last Picture Show, I can see it, definitely holds it. But you're thinking this is gonna go up?
Did this go up the list? I don't think so.
No?
No.
Because you said Do the Right Thing, if I remember last time, you said should go up somewhere in at least the 70s.
Yeah, it should go up a good... I think Do the Right Thing is probably better than this. If only slightly. So, maybe Do the Right Thing shouldn't go up too much. Like, not as much as I said before. But probably at least switch places with The Last Picture Show. Although it's kind of interesting to watch them in this order.
Really?
Yeah, to kind of, like, go back from one to the other.
Yeah, because I know you very much are like, Do the Right Thing is this snapshot of American culture at this very particular time. And I'm of the opinion that Do the Right Thing has a lot of themes that are still, like, echoing throughout. Last Picture Show, I feel, is this great snapshot of this time in America. And its details aren't echoing, but I feel a lot of the themes still echo forever.
They're still echoing to this day. It's just, you know, there's a lot of other things with them.
Like what? What are the other things?
Like, just things that we don't see, or that weren't in this movie, right? Like, we don't see any real, you know, racial tension in this movie, although, you know, some characters mention, quote-unquote, like, Mexicans.
Yeah.
Which they kind of offhandedly do it, and, you know, there's nobody of color in this movie.
No.
Because it's quintessential old school 1950s small town America.
Yeah, and it's also in, you know, the Texas Panhandle.
Yeah, North Texas. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, none of that really comes up in this movie, where it's not about city life, which is much more of a thing now in today's, like, society, but it still has a lot of these things that we still see are true today, you know, that people struggle with today, you know, this kind of, like, influence from your parents, right? Like with Jacy and her mom.
Yeah.
Your parents aren't on the straight and narrow.
You ain't gonna be on the straight and narrow either.
Probably not. You know, it's one of these things that we have a real problem with today is the lack of having a very supporting figure in your life, you know, where you have somebody who you can look up to and really have, like, a beacon of good moral values.
Yeah.
Right? It's, you know, it's a struggle of today's society, and it's shown in this movie. And, that this is kind of like, where people were looking at that in, like, let's say the 70s, right? And they're kind of, like, almost over it at that point. They're like, oh, no, it's just, like, you just be you, and you just go out and do whatever you want to do, and, like, you just live life.
Dude, the 60s counterculture came and went. And this is the aftermath.
This is the aftermath, and, where people kind of, like, glossed over it, because we're thought of having gotten over this, like, stigma, but it's still with us today.
Mm-hmm.
And other things in this movie, like the loss of good Christian values, which, is debatable for some people, but, you can see more people today. Like, we've had this, like, that, like, atheist wave in, like, the late 2000s, with, like, Richard Dawkins and people like that, where it's like, I'm not bashing them or anything, but, like, that the societal impact is definitely felt.
Yeah. It's a thing where society as a whole has just changed so much since this movie.
And it's just like, the 1950s isn't like, oh, this like ideal thing. Obviously bad things happened back then. I mean, we can see this movie set in like the 1950s, and all of these things are very reasonable things that could have happened then. Mm-hmm. Like something that wouldn't happen today is like the guy hits Billy with his truck, and everyone just goes, oh, he was just a dumb boy. There ain't nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
that wouldn't fly today.
No, or the fucking preacher's son driving out with the
son, kid, trying to molest the kid, wouldn't fly today.
God no.
But some things, it's there's always two sides to every coin. There's always good and bad with all of these different like parts of our society, all these different kind of building blocks of how we got to where we are today. You look at this movie and you're like, well, this kind of like close-knit community, this like kind of feeling for one another, being for one another, is like a good thing. It's something to aspire to. Like at the beginning of the movie, like the good Christian values of like, not sex before marriage and like really loving people and like, all that. Mm-hmm. Sure, that's good and whatnot. But these other things where it's, because it's a close-knit community, kind of deal with problems yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of not so great. And, we look at like Do the Right Thing, where, these similar like two sides of the same coin kind of flip up, where they have also another like tight-knit community. That also means that when they have like this big swelling of like racial tension that they take it out on their own community. Mm-hmm. Sal's pizzeria is a cornerstone of their own community, and they burn down something that is a cornerstone of their own community to rise up against the greater whole of racism, where basically they just shoot themselves in the foot because they're angry at the system.
Yeah, and it's honestly watching these two are a very interesting.
Sorry if I went on a huge tangent, by the way.
Bruh, it happens. This is a podcast. This is the reason why we're here. But it really feels like Do the Right Thing and The Last Picture Show is a really, really interesting double feature to go through, because they feel like because they are two totally different movies, but they're very interesting if you do look at them as snapshots of American society at particular times, and the things that are changing or the things that haven't changed.
Also, it's kind of like a weird thing to look at is that The Last Picture Show is portraying a time that it's not. Yeah. Right? It's portraying 1952 when the movie was made in 1971.
Yeah.
But the Do the Right Thing was portraying a time in which it was shot.
Yeah, it was portraying, 89.
Yeah, it was, made in 89, and it was portraying 89. And, like, seeing that kind of, like, that dichotomy of the portraying an era in which you are not actually in. So Do the Right Thing gets, like, 1989 down pat. It's got everything right?
Yeah.
But you can see 1971 influences in The Last Picture Show.
Yeah. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, the how the actors carry themselves alone is so much different than you would get any actor in 51 or 52 to ever portray. Like, you would have to go to France to get that kind of acting.
If this movie was actually shot in 1952 to portray 1952, I bet most of the characters would have less lines and just kind of, like, scrunch their faces and look around to portray emotion.
The Charlton Heston school of acting.
Yes. They would just kind of like... There'd also be a lot more spitting. Not just the coach would be spitting.
Everybody be spitting.
Everybody be spitting.
They're like, we're portraying Texas, right? All right, get the chewing tobacco. Everybody take a dip.
Although the movie would also be in Technicolor.
Randy's like, Technicolor, man.
Technicolor, man. Whoo, Lord.
Oh, Lordy.
Technicolor.
All right, so I guess let's get to the final beat here. So you're saying that this movie, if it were to go up, Do the Right Thing would have to go up above it, right?
I think they should stay next to each other, and they can kind of move around on the list wherever, as long as they're next to each other.
Okay.
Because I believe that their worth as a whole, but their worth on this list is tied to each other.
Okay.
This like quintessential Americana, where it's not as closely related to like Yankee Doodle Dandy, because Yankee Doodle Dandy doesn't face with much deep conflict like these two movies do.
Yankee Doodle Dandy is a very idealistic, ultra patriotic, feel-good musical that I feel is really on there just because James Cagney decided to show up to work that day.
I mean, if this is the only James Cagney movie on the list, I mean, I can see it, like that guy's a legend.
Yeah. Dude, we see a James Cagney cameo in The Last Picture Show. In the beginning of the movie, when they're walking in, they see the poster for White Heat starring Jamie Cagney as they walk in.
Goodness, okay.
I know. I had to get the low one.
You're not going to talk about how Jeff Bridges in this movie, the dude?
Yeah, the dude. Also, did it throw you off that Jeff Bridges in this movie and it's young Jeff Bridges?
Yeah, that was super weird to me.
Super
you
weird.
were like, oh, look, it's the dude. And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And it's like, oh, it's Jeff Bridges. Oh, I see.
Randy was having a moment. He was like, that's
also,
the dude?
The girl that Sonny's with at the beginning of the movie, did she look kind of like Margot Robbie to you?
A little bit. I ain't gonna lie.
A little bit?
Little bit. Like, I don't know if, like, she's her mom or something, but I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think they're related. But, like, they had that kind of, like, same facial structure and whatnot. It kind of was like... And it's funny,
take a double take.
It's funny, too, because Sonny mentions that she's not that hot. I'm just like, she looks kind of like Margot Robbie, though.
You're like, she's hot enough. Well, actually, okay, fun fact about the actors in this, because Sybil Shepherd, who plays Jacy,
yes,
this is her first film. And
she already got her tits out. No, I was joking.
Right,
I was joking.
Wow. But yeah, this is her first film, and we're going to see her later on, because she's a Taxi Driver.
Really?
Yeah, well, she's the main girl in Taxi Driver, not Jodie Foster, the one that Travis pines after. And this is also the debut of Uncle Eddie himself, Randy Quaid.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
he's Lester.
Yeah, Lester. That's the character's name.
Yeah, he's the guy that gets Sybil Shepherd to come with him to the
to the pool party.
Also, like,
oh yeah, I did it last Easter.
Also, Randy Quaid, my friend, even young you are batting way out of your league trying to make out with Sybil Shepherd at that pool party.
Hey man, he's trying. He knows how to get there too. He's like, look, hey, we're at the country club. No
one's around.
Nobody's around. Their parents are off in like Italy or whatever the excuse he makes, or Miami, I think.
Yeah.
And he's just like, there's gonna be beer. Everybody from the country club's gonna be there, and this is right after her mom tells her to go marry some rich guy.
Yeah, Lester's taking a shot.
He's taking a shot. And it's right at this moment in which basically Jace's kind of vulnerable. She is looking for kind of like, she's at this crossroad where she's like, do I want to be like more like my mom? Or do I want to be more like myself?
Does she want to just hold on to that idealization that she had in her youth of adulthood? Or does she just want to embrace what adulthood kind of is?
What it seems like to her through the lens of her mother.
But yeah, all right.
Also, she throws that cat. It's hilarious.
You laughed your ass off.
It's so funny. The beginning of this movie is actually pretty funny.
Honestly, would you recommend this movie, or would you recommend at least the first 30 minutes because it's really funny?
No. Yeah, I don't think I would recommend this movie just because it's so bleak.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the same thing we said about Do the Right Thing. Another like parallel to going on here is Do the Right Thing. I feel is an incredibly important movie. But that is not a let's throw this on Friday and have a couple beers and watch kind of movie. This is also not that kind of movie.
No, it's not that kind of movie.
It's not a let's throw it on, have a couple beers and like watch the.
I mean, I'm like you had a beer through the movie and spilled it and we had to cut it.
Sorry, it was hot today. I'm sorry, but yeah, honestly, I would recommend this movie Just because I think everyone should see this movie at least once. Because I feel there's something in here that you're gonna connect to and see a little bit of yourself in this.
I suppose so.
Because I think all of us at one point felt like one of these kids, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important movie. Definitely you should see it at least once, but you're gonna have to be in a little bit of a mood for it.
Well, I'm not sure if you should watch this when you're already, feeling kind of downer.
No. I don't mean like a downer mood. I mean like in the mood to kind of like look at a movie that's kind of reflective.
Yeah, a reflective view on American values and
youth, youth, everyone's youth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so all in all, I 2 thumbs up for this one.
It was good. It was surprisingly good. It really caught my attention at points. Was a good reflection on both 1970s America and 1950s America. Kind of really good portrayal of real people. This could definitely happen. I believe the book is supposed to be autobiographical.
You see, that's the thing. I did a little bit of research on the book, and most of the book's information is how it is. This book was the basis for the critically acclaimed film of the same name. That's a lot of the information of that book. I couldn't get a full synopsis of it.
Well, I believe it's supposed to be autobiographical of the writer.
Okay, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. This feels like there's a lot of autobiographical stuff going on, because there's some things that are really broad but really specific at the same time.
Yeah, it's like the inclusion of the preacher's son is kind of if it is autobiographical, then I mean,
hey,
that's something that's not just shoehorned in there because reasons. It's something that is real, these things happen type of thing.
That's also a moment that if you were Sonny, that'd be a life changing moment, or at least
to realize that it's people that you've known for years. I mean, it's even Sam the Lion, when he dies, he leaves in his will, he leaves the diner to Genevieve.
Yeah.
He leaves the movie theater to Miss Molly.
Yeah.
He leaves the pool hall to Sonny, and he leaves $1,000 to the preacher's son.
And no one knows why.
Yeah, nobody knows why. Maybe it's one of these things where he's just kind of leaving those 3 businesses to the people who work there. And then he's leaving the $1,000 to the preacher's son, who's this kid who kind of seems like he needs help, right?
Yeah. I mean,
because he seems like he needs help in when he is in the gym class, he's kind of flailing around.
Yeah, and I mean when he is in class, when they
he's
ask
getting bullied too.
Yeah,
the kid he's eating a donut at one of the parties, and the kid comes over and swipes his donut and just eats it in front of his face.
Yeah, and he's also seems really naive when I think that there's a professor that asks him a question an English lit class, and he gives the most well, I don't understand the poem because, it doesn't make sense because you have eternal life if you believe in Jesus. And I'm that is a really off-the-mark response to what's going on, and it's a very naive take on what's being discussed.
Quick tangent. I had a girl like that in one of my college classes, in one of my lecture classes.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. She was really young, I think, maybe 15 or 16 or something.
Really? Oh, was she one of those homeschool kids that got accelerated into college?
And what was the class? I think it was some anthropology class, and she gave some Bible hugging question or something to the teacher, and I was kind of taken aback, being what in the world? And then I realized that she's this really young homeschooled kid.
Oh,
and I was
yeah.
That now it makes real sense.
I mean,
not knocking homeschooling or anything like that, but it's just sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean we were public school kids,
and
so
it didn't go well for us.
Yeah, hey. But yeah, so this is a really good movie. It'll make you think, and there's a lot of stuff in it that I think you'll dig. But yeah, definitely you should be in an introspective mood when you turn this on. But next week, you don't need to be introspective. You just need to be there for the ride. And also maybe have some cocaine. because next week we're going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino's installment on the AFI.
Maybe we have a whiteboard to, like, lay out the scenes in the order in which they happen.
Do you want to see the chronological cut of this movie? It's weird.
I mean, maybe if we have enough time.
Oh, lordy. But yeah, so next week we're going to be watching Pulp Fiction, 1994, Quentin Tarantino, his sophomore effort right after Reservoir Dogs. But yeah, so Pulp Fiction is next week, and this one is going to be just old hat for us. I mean, I've seen Pulp Fiction, I don't know how many times.
I've seen Pulp Fiction, I think, like twice.
Oh, only twice? All right, cool. How long has it been since you've seen it?
Probably like 5 years or so.
Oh, all right. I'm excited to go back to it.
But I'm looking forward to, and also not looking forward to Pulp Fiction.
Really?
Because I like 90% of the movie, but that scene... We all know the scene.
Oh, the scene.
I don't like that scene.
You don't like that scene?
That's one of those things where it's like Quentin Tarantino takes the movie because he always does it, where he takes the movie just a little too far.
Yeah, again, that's why I said...
He's really pushing the boundaries.
All right, but that'll be next week. And if you want to listen or watch along, follow along, what have you, you can find us on our YouTube channel, In the Frame. You can also find us anywhere where podcasts can be found. That's including... Anchor FM, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so on and so forth. And, anything you want to add, Randy, before we close out?
Surprisingly bleak, a lot of tits.
Yeah, a lot of tits. Good day, everyone.
Good day.